On this edition of What Ifs, what if School's Out had a different outcome for its characters? Also, we take a look at the bus crash of next class. Was it necessary? And what if Rick just stayed away from Degrassi? Simple as that. All this and more in this episode of Cutters, Degrassi, What Ifs. So it's time for another What Ifs video. In this one, we start off with the famous movie from Degrassi High called School's Out. Basically, the show ended in 1991, but then they decided to do a movie a year after the last Degrassi High episode. Basically, that everyone is celebrating leaving high school and all that. Of course, Joey failed a grade, so Joey is a high school junior, not a senior like everyone else. And all that, everyone loves to graduate. Spike, Lucy, LD, Wheels, Snake, Tessa, Caitlin, Michelle, and a lot of other characters. All that. So basically, the School's Out movie had brought a lot of things to the forefront. Lucy was allowed to bring her friends to a lakeside cottage and all that for a party and all that. School's Out was different than most Degrassi things because it brought more 18 plus issues through the window, into cramming it into our throats, if you will. I was only 7 years old when this Degrassi movie came out, so basically I wouldn't know anything about it. But anyway, it shows you my age, haha. But anyway, yeah. So two of the most central plot lines were in this. Number one was Joey basically not being with Caitlin, even though they were meant to be together. But because Caitlin kept being busy and working at nights, whereas Joey worked days, basically Joey was looking for a girl who treated him well. He finds Tessa, who basically broke off with her boyfriend. So basically Joey ends up seeing Tessa. But then Caitlin wants to have a relationship with Joey, so Joey stupidly decides to date both of them at the same time, knowing that he can get away with it. Regardless of what ends up happening, things don't go over so well, as basically, Joey gets in trouble and all that. Dealing with the two girls and all that. And of course, as we all know, Joey ends up impregnating Tessa, and then she goes get an abortion and all that. But, of course, that's one part of the small bit of the what if. So, anyway, yeah. So basically, yeah, we got that storyline. And people forget that Tessa actually was a big player in Degrassi Junior High and High. She wasn't just a character introduced to this episode, to the movie from out of nowhere. Tessa actually was the one who inadvertently caused Degrassi Junior High to burn during a dance by accidentally leaving some doors open with Scooter. So that was bad enough. So basically, yeah, Tessa is upset at things and basically doesn't tell Joey anything about her abortion. In the meantime, Joey basically is happy now because now he can date Caitlin. Unfortunately, Snake, after being harassed one too many times by Joey and Wheels, blurts out that Joey gets away with everything. That everything's great. He fucks Caitlin over and fucks her. Like he has sex with Caitlin, and he basically fucks over Caitlin with Tessa. Basically, Caitlin refuses to have anything to do with Joey, but Joey admits that Caitlin would have caught on sooner or later, and basically, yeah. But a part of the what if situation is like Wheels. Wheels in the movie was basically a mechanic who was going to fix up a car and go to Calgary to see his girlfriend. And basically, he's basically drinking left, right, and center. And Snake is, of course, upset because Wheels made a promise never to drink because of how his adoptive parents died in a car crash from a drunk driver. But unfortunately, Wheels basically screws everything up and all that. Wheels is told by Lucy to go with her and get some chips. Wheels offers to drive. He has a beer in the car and all that. And of course, we don't see the whole thing, but basically, Wheels is taken in the back of a police cruiser after it was revealed that he crashed into someone else's car while impaired and killing a 2-year-old who, even though he didn't have his seatbelt on. Wheels tries to plead with Joey that, he's just to get him out and all that. It seems like he didn't want to take responsibility. And the worst part for Wheels is that basically Wheels blinded Lucy, and Lucy had head injuries, and her uplifting career path was stricken because of her disabilities and all that. Fortunately, though, Lucy does end up getting her sight back and all that. Basically, years later, of course, they were part of the first episode, Mother and Child Reunion of Next Gen. Basically put that, they wanted some updates on Next Gen characters. Wheels comes to see Lucy after being released from jail and basically wanted to make things right with Lucy about the accident that blinded Lucy and all that. So the what if is a double bill. Is that what if Tessa basically, by the cube. What if part one is, what if Tessa did tell Joey about the abortion? Well, depends on what Joey's state of mind would have been. For me, the simple answer would be that Joey basically would realize that he just got someone pregnant. He would probably have broken up with Caitlin and been with Tessa and the baby because he knew he had to take full responsibility for that child. Joey probably would have taken full responsibility, A lot of people said, he probably would have just been mad at Tessa for lying that she was on the pill or something. But Joey didn't use protection, obviously. So what ends up happening is that, Joey would have taken full responsibility, I feel, or something weird like that. And, we wouldn't have had the Joey-Caitlin dynamic from Next Gen unless Tessa was the woman that basically Joey lost his wife and Tessa was the one. But anyway, the other what if in the situation is, what if Lucy had not asked Wheels to drive her to get some chips? Now, a lot of people on the Degrassi Reddit actually said that Lucy was just as much his fault because Lucy knew that Wheels was drinking and still wanted him to go to the store because Wheels could have made a mistake behind the wheel, which he did, obviously, and all that. People were saying that if Lucy had just basically not said anything to Wheels or asked someone else to drive her to the store, then Wheels probably would not have gone down the bad path. Wheels still probably would have been alcoholic and headed to Calgary and all that. But, Wheels admitted his guilt and all that. And in season 3 of Next Gen, he talks to Snake and Joey, and basically says that he wanted to die after killing that kid. 9 years in prison will do that to you. So basically, I think, but I know CBC wanted to make it more cutting edge. I think as a PSA, in fact, what could happen with weird situations with high schoolers, like they're 18 years old, they're of age. So, man, that's just messed up and all that. That movie was messed up and all that. It was cool seeing them again, but they really pushed the envelope on a lot of things. So anyway, that's number 1. Okay, part 2. So, as many people know, that there was a storyline in Next Class Season 2 that was controversial. It was basically a volleyball team trying to get back at another team for having a prank. So, Northern Tech's volleyball team actually ended up pranking Degrassi's volleyball team by pulling a fake fire alarm while they were in the shower. So basically, they had to slip out of school barely clothed and all that. And it seemed like Northern Tech was not punished at all and all that. So basically, Degrassi volleyball team decides to paint a poster depicting Northern Tech people in a negative light as the Sioux, because that's what their school is called, the Sioux, for some strange reason. But unfortunately, Shay did not take part in it, and Frankie decided to paint some gorillas. Unfortunately, in Black culture, that is just pathetic. and all that. It's a racist taunt and all that. Northern Tack basically refuses to take the volleyball court against Degrassi for the poster and all that. And basically, Frankie's left high and dry. Shay actually defends Frankie in front of the other team's captain, but then Shay is basically told that, don't you get it with the black culture and all that? And basically, when Shay is told by the captain and her dad about the systemic racism, then she throws Frankie to the wolves. Frankie is kicked off the volleyball team. And everyone's upset that Frankie didn't receive a punishment. Well, she's off the volleyball team. I mean, if she still was on the volleyball team, Simpson probably would have done something. But of course, there was a lot of hatred towards Simpson for not doing anything, and basically, you know, Frankie for getting away with a lot of things. That could be a big what if, and I should make that a what if after that, after the fact. But basically, what I'm talking about is that, lo and behold, you know, the school board. Lo and behold, there were issues. Frankie finally finds out and takes off her rose-colored glasses and basically realizes how terrible she is as a person and apologizes for all the mistakes. The volleyball team lets her on the team, not just because, I guess not because she apologized for being racist, but because they needed her for against Northern Tech and they figured they were going to lose. So lo and behold, Northern Tech loses to Degrassi. Degrassi gets a volleyball win, and then all of a sudden, the volleyball team learns through some avenues that there's been a massive bus crash that had Tristan, Maya, and some supporters bus to the game, trying to get Degrassi to win. So anyway, the bus crash was huge. It had Tristan in a coma for pretty much the whole year. And worst of all, Maya basically went down the slope again. Maya, as many people will know, actually ended up, you know, having kind of a depressive hangover because after Cam killed himself, she basically was blaming herself for not seeing the signs with Cam and all that. She's a kid. How the hell would you know? No. Basically, she feels so depressed and all that she can't get through things. And basically, her depression with Cam basically let out in overprotectiveness towards Miles because Miles made the same statements as Cam did, and she was afraid that Miles was going to be there just like Cam. She basically does get the help she needs, but she refuses to tell herself to talk to people about saying it was Cam because she doesn't want Cam to be an excuse why she's depressed and all that, although it would have helped in a lot of people's judgment calls. So anyway, Maya ends up getting depressed again in season 3 because she realizes that her presence got Tristan in a coma and got some bad stuff. She can't get out of her funk for some reason. Fortunately for her, her sister Katie actually finds out about Maya's depressive funk and decides to come home. But I think that was after Maya was on the roof. So basically, yeah, Maya almost kills herself. Tristan wakes up from his coma and then repeats the line, everyone for pizza and all that. And basically, it pissed off a lot of people. So basically, my what if is, what if the bus crash never happened? How would that change next class? That's a good question. It's a hard question to answer because, you know, all that. In a sense, it's kind of like Tristan in a coma and all that. But I think that, you know, it advanced a storyline that with Miles, with his relationship with Tristan, like trials, and it advanced Maya getting depression again. I think in a way that they should not have. I think Maya would never have had her second wave of depression. I think Maya, like, you know, Maya wasn't really a central focus of season 2 of Next Class. In a sense, what if it didn't happen? Then the writers might have found something else for Maya to get upset about. Maybe she'll have a depression, but it's not bus crash related. And here's the thing, though. It actually would not have had the character development of Esme and Syed. Remember, Syed is the guy who basically turned Maya onto death porn or whatever it is. And basically made Maya go down the slope. But, you know, Esme wasn't really introduced until season 3. So basically, Esme's character development would have been different. Like, you know, Esme having her her problems due to the fact that Miles shares bloody pictures of Tristan in a coma, even though Miles says that we shouldn't forget Tristan and all that. Miles still cared about Tristan and all that. I think that they would have found something else for Esme, but I think Esme's development would not have been as big. So yeah, so that's a huge factor. Did they really need a bus crash? I don't know. I did an unpopular opinions video about it, but basically, it's a what if. All right, and finally, number 3 on your screen. Now, of course, I've spent a lot of time in my playlist, my normal Degrassi playlist, talking about the Rick Murray situation. I did some color unpopular opinions because of the shooting, and I, of course, did the playlist with Rick Murray, whatever it takes and all that. Of course, you don't see any clips from it because obviously YouTube was pissed off at me. So anyway, yeah. So to state this, it's the big what if. The only what if I think everyone would know is what if Rick never returned to Degrassi after what he did to Terry and all that. Now there is an issue with this, and I'm going to say it bluntly. I don't think the character developments would have been as good as they seem to be without Rick in their lives. I mean, okay, if Rick never came back, maybe Paige's year in season 4 would have been much better. I mean, after all, Paige had problems in season 4, and that's a what if that's going to be covered at another time. So yeah, so basically Paige's development, a lot of character developments would never have happened. Paige dealing with somebody back in her life and trying to get rid of it for the justice for Terry. It actually would have made Spinner, Jay, and Alex less evil in a sense because how hatred of the. But Spinner and Jay are troublemakers, and it's still, and Alex are troublemakers. They still would have had some issues, but if Rick never came back to Degrassi, we would not have known the scope of Alex's problems with her mother's abusive boyfriends. We probably would never see a super villain side to Jay. We would probably not see Spinner be so cartoony villainy and all that. We would probably, not see character development of Toby and all that. Because Toby, has been thrown to the wolves after season 2 for storylines and all that. Like, Toby's development as a character probably would have been stunted if Rick wasn't there. Because, JT probably would have left Toby for Danny, Rick Murray or not. And basically, Toby would have been at a crossroads. Maybe he tries to find a relationship with Emma. Who knows? Maybe Toby and Emma would have been an item somehow. But, I mean, lots of character developments would not have been major. Would Terry have been allowed to come back in season 4? Although the writers probably didn't want that. I mean, would Terry have basically been back? You also got to realize, guys, that, Mr. Simpson, what if Snake had a character development, even though he wasn't a major player in the Rick Murray situation, because, it got him better known. And little did we know that Snake would use the Rick Murray situation to further his education career and make sure that any student that had issues with their mental health would get helped. Although he never helped Cam out. Although he never saw it. He should have seen something in Cam. I mean, if you see a little speck in Cam, you just try to get him into counseling and all that. Maybe after the suspension he levies on Cam, he should have just said to Cam, then you're going to get some time with the guidance counselor. Maybe he goes to counseling, and maybe Cam doesn't kill himself. But the fact of the matter is, what about Jimmy, though? Jimmy was a decent character. Jimmy had some growth and all that. Ellie would probably never have broken up with Sean because, Sean left in the wake of the Rick Murray situation. Ashley, I don't think the shooting affected Ashley, and Rick Murray situation affected Ashley in any phase, or Craig. Although, to be honest, Craig would not have had his bipolar problems pop up because of him seeing Jimmy on the ground. And, Craig basically ended up having issues. But, of course, the two biggest people with their character development that this Rick Murray situation would not have helped are Radice and Emma. Now, for Radice, it's tough to say that, it's basically a character and an actor point of view. Because this whole Rick Murray situation, because Radice wasn't really known for getting into things. The first few episodes of season 4, he was kind of in the background. He was talking to Mr. Armstrong saying that his school's budget is terrible and he can't get Armstrong the stuff he requires, although he's trying. And of course, from the actor's point of view, like Dan Woods was ready to move on because, he was only in Toronto a few days to shoot scenes and he wasn't in too many scenes. They definitely would have come up with a different way to get rid of Radice. Probably something big happens in season 4. And maybe Radice ends the season just leaving. And then basically that means Dan Woods leaves too. But yeah, the Rick Murray situation hastened the closure of Dan Radice. Maybe Radice actually would have been replaced in season 4 if they didn't think about the Rick Murray situation. But obviously they wanted the Rick Murray situation from many points of view, and from the administrator's point of view of failing him in a sense. Because that's what Radice did. He failed Rick. And Emma, what about her? This whole Rick Murray situation actually changed her character, although some say for the worse. But follow me on this. Now, I'll be talking about this what if with Emma and basically being petty with Chris and basically not falling into Paige's clique and all that. But the Cliff Notes is that basically with the Rick Murray situation is that Emma had no friends. She hung on to Paige's clique to get friends, realizes Paige's clique will do nothing but destroy Rick no matter what it took. She defends Rick, she loses the clique, she only gains Rick, Toby, and Heather St. Clair as friends. Basically, she's all by herself. Rick is obsessed with her. Rick kisses her. She flat out rejects Rick. Rick comes back with a gun, attempts to shoot Emma, but Sean says good day. Emma has PTSD. She can't understand what's going to happen. She can't bounce back like she normally does. It just hurt. It just hurts. And, her personality got changed in a good way and a bad way in a sense. But maybe the Rick Murray situation was good for Emma because, Emma was probably really much hated in season 3. Basically, I know a lot of people who hated seasons 1 to 3 of Emma because she was over pretentious in a sense. But yeah, it helped Emma out. I think Emma would not have gotten the love she would have received. And basically her character would have just been the same boring old Emma that basically pissed a lot of people off in the early days of the internet. So anyway, thanks for watching this episode. There'll be another episode coming up soon enough. Bye for now.